Hey guys, it's Stephanie here. I'm so excited because it is early spring and that means I get to prune my roses. I love pruning. Pruning is one of my favorite things to do in the garden. It is so satisfying knowing that you're gonna help your plant reach its full potential. Sorry, my husband was just yelling, talking about how he's gonna prune his apple trees. He's really good at pruning fruit stuff. I don't do that. I do all the flowers and those kind of things. He does all the vegetables. Anyway, it's time to prune. It's early spring. The leaves are starting to bud on my roses. So today I'm just gonna be pruning my lavender hedges. I'll show you how I do that, and then I'm gonna prune my roses. So I've been using this method. It's the Dave Austin method. I love the roses, so all my roses are pretty much Dave Austin. I still follow the same kind of rules with all my other roses. I'll put it in the link below, or you can check out their Instagram. It has on the bubble their pruning methods. It's such a simplified explanation and really simple to follow. Okay, so I have a rose that I've already pruned. I'm gonna go show you the other ones, and then after that we'll get to my lavender hedge. Before I go over to my roses, I was just gonna show you a quick shot of my husband pruning his trees.
My new pruners.
I know, these pruners are awesome. Awesome? What are they again?
They're the Corona 1-inch.
Corona 1-inch. Anyways, I had to give him a little snippet since he was really excited about pruning today too.
Thanks.
We're having a lot of fun pruning. Okay, so now I'm here at my roses. Those pruners would actually be really awesome to prune your roses with. All you need is some pruners, some smaller ones preferably, and then a measuring tape for measuring a stick, and then your rose bushes. So here I have one that's already pruned. The first thing you want to do, so this is for an established rose, and then I also have some first year roses that I'm going to go to later, but for an established one, they just suggest Dave Austin, and what works really, this has been working awesome for me, is you just want to prune it down by half, and it depends on how tall it is. If you have a really tall rose bush and you want to get it down a lot shorter, you can go shorter, but just go for about 1/2. Roses really are fantastic at getting pruned. They can handle so much. Sometimes you can even prune them to the ground and they'll grow back if you really want to rejuvenate them and start over. But if you don't, measure them how tall they are, and then you just prune them by half. That's what I'm following here. It works great for me. I measured the top one and the average is about 22 inches. So I'm gonna cut them down to about 12 inches or 11 inches if you wanna go a little bit shorter. And then I have my little stick, so I measured it and I'm just gonna stick it in there. I made this about 13 inches tall to give an inch to dig in this soil to put in the dirt. And so then it's just a nice little guide. I'll follow everything about that height. So I'm gonna do that first step, and then when I do that step, I'll show you the next steps. Okay, this is where it gets super fun. I love the sound of the clip. Oh darn, that wasn't loud enough for you guys. Isn't that just so satisfying? I just know that I'm making this plant even stronger. So you want to cut it down and you want to do this so that it gets nice airflow through the center and that you're producing a stronger structure and a root system and all those things, especially with your first year plants. I'll show you that later, but it's very important with those first year plants to give them a nice pruning. Okay, so I'm just gonna follow along as I cut. So now that I have this one about as tall as I want, I'll just follow that guide. Do you guys love pruning? I find it's just so satisfying. Okay, so as you can see, I'm just going around. That's the only thing I'm worrying about right now, is the first thing I'm doing is just cutting it down. You know, those big ones, that's where it gets really, that crunch. Okay. This is so peaceful. I'm just listening to my river. It's a nice overcast day. It's kind of humid but not cold. The wind is just blowing subtly. It's really a perfect day for pruning. Okay, now that all of it is cut to the same height, about 12 inches, I am looking at this rose bush and it's gonna need some heavy pruning. It has suffered just a little bit from all of its moving, but roses are really resilient. So if you get really nervous about cutting a ton off, do not worry about it. It's really gonna help the plant get a little bit stronger and produce a lot more blooms and all those things. So don't worry about it too much. I know it seems kind of scary at first if you're new to pruning. Just trust this process and you'll be fine. As I'm looking at this, there are a lot of skinny, weak stems. So you look at that, that's dead. First of all, we're gonna cut out the dead. You can tell the difference because the color is brown a little bit darker and it's on its way out. This isn't quite dead, but you can tell it's on its way out. And then the next thing you want to do is cut out all the weak, skinny stems. So this is a thick one and this is skinny. So I'm going to cut all of these out. So you can see there's a lot of weak, skinny stems in this rose bush. It's going to really need a heavy pruning. These little stems, they just cannot support blooms. So last year I couldn't figure out why my blooms were not staying on. They'd start to come out and then they just flop and fall off. And it's because as I'm looking at this plant now, they were on all these weak stems and it just couldn't handle it. So you really want blooms to be produced on stronger stems so they stay up and they don't flop and fall off. Okay, I'm gonna cut these out and then I'll show you what it looks like after. Okay, I'm gonna even cut this one out because it's weak. So if I have a lot of just thick ones and not very many, that's okay. It will grow nice and big. You'll be surprised. It will produce so many new stems, so many new leaves, and it will get about this tall, double the height this year. So okay, I'm just giving you a little idea here. And sometimes plants just get old too. If you have 30-year-old roses and everything's starting to just look like it's struggling, sometimes you just have to replace them. 30 years is a long time. All right, I'm about done with this, but if you have some branches that are crossing over, just go ahead and cut those down. You don't want them competing with each other. There we go. Make sure you don't get the other ones. All right, I think that's about it. I've got all the weak stems out. See how heavily I've pruned this? This is just, oh, there's another crossing one right there that I'm gonna get rid of. There we go. I think that's about good. Oh, there's a few weak ones right here. Okay, so I'm done with this rose bush. I'm really excited. There's got a lot of nice sunlight that's going to come through, and now it's going to produce blooms that are strong rather than floppy, and then they fall with one little rainstorm. Okay, I'm going to go show you how I prune a new rose. This is my Emily Bronte rose. It's a Dave Austin rose, and this is the second, we're going into the second year. So I planted it last year as a bare root shrub rose, and this grew this much in 1 year. It came as a little bare root with stems about this tall from the ground. So I have my little stick here. This is a 12-inch stick. I measure at 13 inches, and then I'm just gonna cut everything down at that height. So this is a really healthy rose. This one didn't get moved like crazy. It's gonna stay here for good. There's no moving it. And then this one's really easy to, these first year plants are really easy to prune. As you can see, there's not a ton of thin stems or anything I gotta clean out. That's a long stem I just cut down. And you'll be amazed, it will grow. It will become a nice full bush in the matter of one summer. This one has a really nice healthy start. Don't miss that first year of pruning. I got 8 more roses to prune. As soon as I get all those done, cleaned up, we'll move over to my lavender hedge. I could spend all day pruning. This is so fun for me. Now that I got all of my roses off to a great start, they got a nice haircut for the season, I am gonna go get after my lavender hedge. This is super fun too. I have this electric hedger that I use. I feel really spoiled, but I do have a lot of lavender, so it was just kind of a joke to do it by hand. Just too much work, so I did invest in one of these. It took me a few years, but now I have one. It makes it so much easier. So here's a little looker of it. It's a fuel brushless one, Milwaukee. It works great. I don't use this very often. I use it spring and fall, and maybe that's about it. As my plants get a little bit bigger, I'll use it more. But having it just for my lavender hedge makes it all worth it. Here's my lavender hedge. It's gonna be so pretty. I did widen it earlier in winter. I have a video on that, about 3 to 4 feet over. I wanted a little bit more space. It was just creeping into my beautiful river, and I really want to make a beautiful cottage mass of flowers throughout here. It's taken me so long to clean this area. It was such a mess, and I've killed so much ground cover, and now I just have some grass from where I widened. And I think in the next week this will all be cleaned up. I'll put mulch down, and then I can plan for my plantings in the next month or two. It's going to be really, really pretty. I just cannot wait. Anyway, there are a few tips when you are pruning your lavender. So you want to make sure you do it in spring or fall, and do not miss a year, otherwise it will go woody. If you have missed a year, that's okay, but that wood at the base will grow a little bit, and you can't cut it down as low. If you cut into that wood, it won't grow back, and it can get disease and it can die. I wish I had a picture to show you. I do not though. And then your next tip is you want to cut as far down as you can before it does get woody. So you see this growth right here. If you look right here, it stops growing till about right here. So I'm going to cut up a little bit right above that growth so I don't cut into the wood, to keep it nice and healthy. And then when you're pruning it, just kind of do it in a mound. So I'm going to go about 3 to 4 inches above the ground and do it with all of them. Obviously I have a few here that are a little bit smaller, so I don't need to do that as much. So this has growth all the way to the base. So I could go about 1 inch above here. They're a little bit smaller. But just make sure you're cutting above the woody surface. Okay, let's get pruning. This part's super fun too. Okay, I got my lavender pruned right before the storm is gonna come in. It's gonna rain and lightning here in a few hours, so I'm really happy that I got both my roses and my lavender pruned. I feel like it's fitting that I'm pruning both of them right now because they are a match made in heaven together. What a beautiful combination. I was looking at that flower bed over here, and I was thinking maybe I could go crazy and plant 1,000,000 roses since they look so beautiful with lavender, but that would be a ton of pruning. I don't know if I'm up for that task. If you guys have any ideas of what would look pretty in here, I'm always open to suggestions. I could always use a little help. I haven't quite planned it yet, so I'd love some inspiration from you guys. Anyway, this was fun. This lavender is gonna look really, really good in a few months. In summer, it's gonna make it look much more full and abundant and a lot more blooms. If you feel like you've screwed up on your lavender or you didn't know these things, don't worry about it. Go buy a new plant. If some of my lavender come in not looking like I want them to, they're $4 at my local nursery, and they grow really fast. In 2 to 3 years, they'll be nice and big again. And so I'm not sure how all of mine are gonna transplant. I think they'll be okay, but if a few didn't, I'm just gonna replace them, and then they can catch up with the other ones shortly. So don't stick with the plant that looks ugly, woody. If it just drives you nuts, go buy a new one, start over, and it will be just fine. In 2 to 3 years, you'll be happy again. Thanks for stopping by. Give me a like, subscribe, comment down below if you have any questions. Hit the notification bell for future videos, and then have a wonderful day gardening. Goodbye.